My name is Ezekiel Landry. And I'd like to speak a little bit about China-Africa relations. China has decided to help African countries with their debt situations, and it seems like they're doing it faster than Western nations. China recently announced relief for 17 African countries by canceling the debt on roughly 23 interest-free loans. And this move shows that China's commitment to being a strong and cooperative partner for Africa, especially in the face of what they call hegemonic and bullying practices. In a meeting with Chinese and African diplomats, China also revealed that they'll direct just about $10 billion from their International Monetary Fund, IMF, also known as the IMF, and they're going to redirect 10 billion of their IMF reserves to African nations. This decision is expected to free up much needed funds for African countries, which can be used for economic recovery and domestic spending to improve people's lives. China has been investing heavily in Africa through initiatives like the Forum of Africa-China Cooperations, FOCAC, and the Belt and Road Initiative, the BRI. By February 2022, China had invested $23 billion in Africa's infrastructure, according to courts. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, has expressed concerns about the debt situation in Africa. And with more than 20 low-income African countries facing distress or the risk of distress by the end of 2021, the combination of growing debt, the COVID-19 pandemic, and climate change impacts have left many African countries in tough situations. They losing jobs, their livelihoods are at risk, and the economic growth is just absolutely horrible. So China's 10 billion debt cancellation is a significant relief for these struggling African countries, especially when other relief efforts like the G20's debt service suspension initiative have been slow to materialize. China has a history of providing debt relief to African countries through various initiatives, and this recent move is part of their ongoing efforts. The China-Africa Research Initiative, CARI, has categorized Chinese debt relief into different types, including debt cancellation under FOCAC, ad hoc relief, and contributions to the IMF's Catastrophe Containment and Relief Trust. These efforts involve renewing or refinancing outstanding loans, extending repayment times, restructuring, or even forgiving some or all of the debt. Chinese banks have also offered significant debt restructuring to African countries, totaling over $3.4 billion, according to CARI. Contrary to Western critics who claim that China uses debt to trap African countries, CARI notes that Chinese lenders have not pursued lawsuits or asset seizures in cases of debt default. While the U.S. accuses China of practicing debt trap diplomacy, claiming that China deliberately lends money to countries that can't repay it, African policymakers and researchers disagree. They see China as a cooperative partner that respects African political systems. While the U.S. accuses China of practicing debt trap diplomacy, claiming that China deliberately lends money to countries that can't repay it, African policymakers and researchers disagree. They see China as a cooperative partner that respects African political systems and sovereignty. The debt relief from China is seen as a crucial step in helping African countries recover from the economic challenges exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic and ballooning external debt. Unlike the West, which often treats Africa as a recipient of aid with imposed conditions, China aims for mutually beneficial relations based on respect for African nations. In summary, China's financial relief and debt cancellation showcase its commitment to being a trusted friend and long-term development partner for Africa. And this move goes beyond rhetorical promises and demonstrates China's willingness to make sacrifices to support struggling African economies in their recovery efforts.